Hi everyone. Following our win the other night, it was back to the board all weekend with the 2011 Preston Congress, where I was for once didn't have to go in a major because there was an under 145 section, which put me only a few points actually below the restriction. So I'd be going for prizes in this, that's for sure. And I was finally starting to feel confident again. So I turned up on the Friday night about 25 minutes late due to traffic. So I only started with an hour and 15 minutes on clock to make 40 moves and then I get another 20 back. I was playing Ian Hope 127 ECF, but I had black, so I've got to beat a 127 as black, which it's easy said than done because I'm only 14 points higher and I'm playing as black. And especially seeing as I could tell from my first few moves that my opponent is probably not the most ambitious. He was spending a lot of time as well. I caught the time up at about move 9 or 25 minutes of it, which is rather strange. But anyway, I came in late and started the game, and he played d4, and I played Stonewall again with I played e6 move order so I didn't get an anti-dutch. And he plays c4 and I play f5, signalling the opening. He plays knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, d5, cd, ed, and e3. The most solid way to play against this is to actually finish out the bishop on g3, because the bishop will protect white's king and it has a strong influence on the diagonal, putting pressure on the d5 point to me perhaps. Although he plays c6. Like, now he plays e3, I play c6, and after bishop d3, bishop d6, he plays queen c2, aim the battery at the f5 pawn. You could also have played like a reverse Stonewall with knight e5, castles, and f4 is another viable option. Instead he plays queen c2, and I play the logical move knight e4, which blocks the attack on the f-pawn and brings the knight to a very strong square. There's an option of sacrificing the pawn with castles, and after bishop takes f5, bishop takes f5, queen takes f5. Actually the discoveries don't do anything, but the open f line after queen e7 is quite strong, and black can get the initiative if white isn't careful, and white's c1 bishop is locked in behind the pawn as well. So knight e4 I played, and now he castles, and just so you know, bishop takes e4 isn't a good idea. So say f takes e4, opening the f file up, and now if knight d2 then castles, and look at all this firepower that white's pieces are all stuck on the queen side because the e4 pawn's cutting everything off, and there's all sorts of nasties like queen h4, rook pressures on f2, bishop cutting through, both bishops slicing through. And also f takes c4 when it's played opens up the bad c8 bishop, which is the main drawback behind this opening setup. So white should play knight e5. After bishop takes e5, d takes e5, knight d7, this pawn is going to drop off. And the pawn drops off, and black's going to be a pawn up, and also knight d3 check is coming. So this is almost lost already. So he castles instead, sensibly. I castle, and now he brings the knight into his own outpost on e5. And this actually is a pure outpost, because my knight can actually now be kicked away with f3, which it is soon. Whereas his knight actually cannot be kicked away by pawns, only pieces can get at it. And I challenge the knight and bring my knight into the game with knight d7. Bishop takes e5 doesn't seem like a good idea. After d takes e5, knight d7, f4. White has got a strong centre and has got a protected passed pawn on e5, which is actually quite hard to blockade perhaps. And white can also have a rook cliff with rook h3 to rook f3 to rook h3, which could be quite dangerous. So this isn't advisable. I play knight d7 and then he kicks my knight with f3. Now I play knight takes c3, not wanting to waste moves like I did in the last game. And now in this position, now you're thinking if white catches with the b pawn, it's all going to be really good. I mean, he can't capture with b pawn in this position because his knight's attacked twice and defended once. So there was the option of throwing in knight takes d7, bishop takes d7, and bishop b takes c3. And white's got a good like collar type setup with this pawn triangle, e3, d4, and c3, bishop and d3. So also rather nice that, doesn't it? Well, black plays c5, undermining white's centre, And now I discovered with my engine a very crazy variation, which nets black a significant positional advantage. He played queen b3, an interesting move which attacks b7 and d5, and it looks like it walks into a pawn fort, but things aren't quite simple as that. So it's c4, and now queen takes b7, and if the bishop on d3 is taken, then queen takes d5 check, followed by queen takes d6. There is, because the bishop can't block because it's not defended. So this looks bad for black. Well, now white's up a pawn, but we have the quiet move bishop e6. And now white's bishop's attacked, but this move also allows, well, there's bishop c2, and now there's a really strong tactic based on white's queen having very few squares. Now the thing is, if you play the rook move, if you try and play the rook move to trap the queen immediately, well, the a7 pawn drops. If black were to play rook fb8, it would trap the queen as long as the third rank gets cut off, or sixth rank. No, it's third rank. So what do? You play the very strong move bishop takes h2 check, king takes h2, and now queen d6 double exclamation mark. Now you see the squares have been cut off where the queen can escape, and all it needs is rook fb8, and because it's with checked, and after king h1, rook fb8, white's queen's trapped. However, white is a piece up, and white can actually save his queen with the very strong move bishop a3, just giving a piece back, because then white's queen has access to c6, and black's queen can't go anywhere that maintains the threat to white's queen, and if say if it moves back, then black can just white will always get access to c6, and it'll just be up a piece. So you have to take the bishop, but after queen c6, rook e8, I think black is significantly better in this position. White's king's a bit open, and as long once black gets his queen back into the game, it's going to be strong. So anyway, that was a very interesting computer variation I thought I'd share with you. So queen takes c3 was played instead, and now I played knight f6, just freeing up the c8 bishop. And there might be a pawn stack at some point with f4 to liberate this bishop, but there's none quite yet. He plays b3, preparing bishop b2, just developing the last piece into the game. I played queen e8, typical Dutch move, trying to swing the queen over to h5 where he participates in the kingside attack and he's more active. And now he plays bishop b2, and I decided to play a move. It's starting to turn out a bit like last game, this. Now I could have played bishop e6, queen c2, and queen h5 is quite good, but I play king h8, just preparing a hack with g5, but I never actually quite get time. Because he plays queen c2, and I realised that he's piling all his pieces on e4, but he's also threatening f5. And I had a look at e4, but not a very big look. So when I went queen h5 to defend the pawn, I know I thought I was very happy at this point. Now first of all, his knight is pinned because of queen takes h2 if it moves anywhere. I've also got potential plans of trying to get a knight into g4. What plans have I got? I just got this like pressure I have. Or maybe knight back to d7. Yeah, knight back to d7 to challenge his knight. As a start. And trying to like and I'm trying to provoke I'm trying to provoke f4, which should protect the knight but give me g4 and have dangerous pressure against h2. I just thought this is a really good position, this. It's actually not that brilliant. If white plays something like queen d2, knight d7, a4, preparing bishop a3 to swap the dangerous bishop off, which is a tactic we saw in last game, white's probably better if anyone. But my opponent actually plays a bad move which actually shook me at the time. He plays e4. And I've been playing fast at this point due to the time deficit, but I had a bit of thinking, yeah. I decided that to enter a long forcing sequence, which actually is given as completely the best by Houdini, which I was very happy to see after the game. It shows I'm actually starting to play some good chess now when I'm playing as good as Houdini. I might be 3000 strength all of a sudden. Now the point being is that I can get the bishop pair and give white an isolated queen's pawn at the cost of white getting a temporary initiative, but white's initiative actually cannot last, and when white's initiative dies, I will be left with some white's dynamic advantage of the initiative will evaporate, and I'll be left with the a static advantage of having a bishop permanent and white having a weak pawn structure. You see, static advantages are more important if the dynamic advantages can't be made any use of, and they can't in this position. So e4 was a nice try and hack me up, but it doesn't quite work. Although the game will be far from over. I'm only given a slight advantage of like minus 0.4, which at this level is nothing. It's only a 1-2-7 via 1-4-1. If it was a 2-2-7 via 2-4-1, it might be significant, but not in this position. So anyway, I think I have to take anyway, to be honest, but it's the best continuation. So I play FE, FE, DE, Bishop E, and now knight takes E4. And of course, white needs to try and get some initiative, so he throws in the in-between with rook takes F8 check. Because after bishop takes F8, you notice that both my bishops are on the starting squares. And after queen takes E4, after this long forcing continuation, which is given as best by the engines, let's evaluate the position. Now let's see, white's got his dynamic advantages of he's got a lot, his development, like both my bishops on the start squares, like I've only really got my queen in the game, you see. White's got a raking bishop down the diagonal once his pawn moves. His knight is very strong in the centre, he's got a very strong centralised queen. His rook can come to F1 and knight F7 check is very strong. This just looks really nice for white, this. I mean, who cares if he's got an IQP and black's got a bishop in an open position, who needs them? I've got the initiative, and I have to be very careful actually not to get squashed. However, if I can survive, which actually isn't that difficult, I'm left with these static advantages for the endgame. And in fact, it's my move, and white's queen, although it's beautifully centralised, it is subject to tempo winning attacks. And now I have two good bishop moves. I had played bishop f5, but bishop e6 is also good, possibly even better, preparing bishop d5. And say rook f1, bishop d6, and it's only took two moves, and all black's pieces are coming into the game, and this bishop pair is really strong, and white's not got any attacking chances here. Black's king's too safe. And next could come rook f8, say, swapping the rooks off, and then black's bishop over on the board, and the bishop in the Dutch, which is usually like really bad, i.e. the light square bishop, is actually going to be a monster in these coming positions. So let's see how the game panned out. Bishop f5, now he plays queen f4, and I play bishop actually back to e6. But the loss of tempo actually isn't that important. In fact, his queen's a bit dodgy on f4. I've like provoked it to a weaker square because bishop d6 is going to pin that strong knight. Now he plays rook f1. And I was a bit worried at some point here. I thought now he's planning knight f7 check, which actually isn't that strong, but I was worried of it, of course, because it's like a knight coming in at my king, and all his pieces on f-file. So I was quite worried. And I was also worried maybe a potential pawn sacks with d5, which would like attack the bishop and his knight could move, but while my bishop's on f8, there's going to be nothing on g7. And there's nothing really too much for black to fear here. I play the best move, king g8, which just defends f7 again with three pieces, and prepares to move the bishop and then play rook f8, forcing the white's heavy pieces back. I could also have played bishop e7, just developing bishop into the game. And now he could play knight f7 check. And there's two options, and one's either's a lot better than the other. One actually is the calm move, king g8, which is the best move, just asking the knight what it's doing on f7, and now it's got no purpose. I'm just actually threatening to take it, so it has to move back, and then rook f8 will follow when black's better. Or I could have played bishop takes the weaker, bishop takes f7, queen takes f7, and taking queen's a blunder due to rook takes f7 with very strong pressure on the 7th rank while my rook's doing nothing. So queen e2 is best, with the aggressive move attacking white's bishop and defending my own. This would be very equal, so the best continuation would be, of course, knight f7, king g8, and just look at the position and what has white got there? Nothing. So king g8, protecting it. And now my opponent takes his foot off the gas pedal with the same move, queen f3, just offering a queen swap. Bishop c3, however, saves to my bishop c3, maintaining tension. I just go bishop d6, pinning the knight, and black consolidates his static advantages, and now his winning chances. Queen f3 is basically admitting defeat in the e4 plan, because his plan with e4 must have been to try and open the position up to exploit my awkward development by sacrificing his pawn structure and the bishop pair, and because it's failed, now I'm left with my he's got his chronic weakness of the d pawn, and I've got two raking bishops in an open position. But again, I think that it's only a really small advantage to black in this position, and the best move is to take the queens off, because white's king's a bit safer and white's queen's more aggressive, so it's best to swap the queens off. And this gets rid of any of white's attacking chances and leaves black to try and win the endgame with these advantages, these like trump cards, as King's Crusher would say. Rook takes f3, now bishop e7, developing the last piece into the game, and preparing rook f8. He plays king f2, bringing the king into the game, because in the end game we know that the king's the most important piece, worth an extra 4 points if you get it activated. Now I play rook d8, because when your opponent's got an isolated pawn, especially on a half open file, you should aim to directly pressure the pawn. I'm also controlling the d5 square, so the pawn can never advance. The pawn also, which is locking his b2 bishop in as well. But it is also protecting the e5 knight, so it does have its advantages. It's quite double-edged, but it should favour blackness. He protects it again with rook f4, and I play bishop d6, with a pretty obvious threat of bishop takes e5, followed by rook d2 check, picking the bishop up. He plays king e3, stopping that threat, and I play rook f8, offering a rook swap, but this only really leads to a drawn endgame. I could have played a5, bishop c3, rook a8, rook f2, a4 is a better winning attempt. Just trying to rip open the queen side, and white's going to have his hands full having to defend against this active rook now and some dangerous bishops. I play rook f8 and my opponent actually takes and offers me a draw, which I declined in about a second. I was thinking that, alright, this probably is going to be a draw, I admit, but I'm higher graded. I need to win to try and win the tournament. It's only round 1, I don't want to be drawing against low rated in round 1. I've been playing well recently. And if anyone's going to win, it's probably going to be me, because I've got the bishop pair against the bishop knight in an open position, and I've also got a superior pawn structure. And I can maybe try and hack that d pawn off the board, but to be honest, I should have kept the rooks on if I'm trying to hack the d pawn off the board. So that was a bit stupid. The rook swap does favour white. But I reject and play king takes f8, bringing my own king into the game, and he gets even more active with king f4, but this move does expose him to a pin. Another move was g3, king e7, knight c4, bishop b4. Well, black should never take that knight, because he'd get rid of his most important bishop and strengthen white's pawn structure. So bishop b4, bishop a3, takes, king d6, and black has some winning chances, but hasn't really got enough to win the game, to be honest. But king f4, getting aggressive with king, and now king e7. Bringing my own king into game, and now g4, king f6. By the way, what's interesting is that if my bishop wasn't pinning his knight, d5 would be quite strong for white in this position, I think, or quite dangerous, but thankfully it doesn't work. He plays g5 check and king e7 only move, and now bishop c3. Another option was to play g6, which looks like a beginner's mistake, because of course his knight can't take back if I take his pawn. But after h takes g6, king g5, that pawn can't be defended. So bishop f5, well, it can be bishop f5 say, but now it's unpinned, so knight takes g6, bishop takes, king takes, bishop takes h2, king takes g7, bishop f4, and this is probably almost certainly going to be a draw. There's a little winning, there's just no winning chance for black here actually. That pawn's easily defended for a start, and black's not even up material. Start won't be a way to win. h6, another attempt, and now h4, and this is also going to be drawn, I think. I think that g6, white missed like an immediate draw with g6, to be honest. Can't see any way he's going to be progress made in this position. And considering variations like mine, it's not 0.05, and that's born because of the bishop pair. The bishop pair in white's isolated pawn only adds up to about a 20th of a pawn. So that shows how insignificant it's become, and that's why I should have kept the rooks on. He plays bishop c3, and now I play g6, stopping him playing g6 himself, because I'd seen it by now. Bishop b2, bishop f5, just getting the bishop more active and trying to pick up some pawns with bishop b1, and then bishop a2, you know that good little trick there you see a lot. So he stops it with a3, and I just lock it in, and I realised if he plays b4 it's probably going to be drawn, so I play a5 to stop that, going all out for the win. And now he plays bishop back to c3, because he's got a policy now of moving his bishop back to b2 and c3, but this is just a bad blunder. He should have played king back to e3, because the queen side is becoming the most important part now, and it also unpins his knight for future operations. For example, bishop e6, knight c4. The point now, if bishop takes h2, then knight takes a5 looks strong. So bishop c7 is best. King d3, b5, hitting the knight. Knight back to e5, and now bishop takes b3. Knight takes c6, king d6, knight e5. And again in a lot of variations, white's bishop and knight is holding out against the bishop pair, because this although weak isolated pawn, it's like controlling the key square e5, and that knight is just a complete thorn in my side. And it's like very hard to make progress with that knight there. If you go back a few moves, I could have got rid of the knight with bishop takes e5, but after d takes e5, this leaves what we call bishops of opposite colour. So even when I win a pawn with bishop takes b3, bishop c3, a4, king d4, white's passed e pawn in combination with the opposite bishop's opposite colour endgame x is likely to be drawn despite black's extra pawn. So that was another way to draw. So bishop c3 plays, and now I miss a win. I should have just took an a3, and after bishop takes a5, bishop c1, skewering his king to pawn, he has to move in, now bishop takes g5, and black's two connected kingside pawns against one, like this big pawn majority, coupled with white's pawns all split. Like white's got 3 pawn islands and black's got 2. This should make the win inevitable, and it's minus 1.5. And also, there's going to be pawns on both sides of the boards, and bishops are better than knights in them situations, and I've got 2 bishops against bishop and knight. So all in all, this adds up to a win for black, but it would take a bit of technique. But it should be a win. And by the way, at this point, we was coming up to time control, and despite my actual, I've been playing quite fast apart from I think after e4, so I wasn't in any time trouble. And he was actually getting there, only about 5 minutes for 5 moves, if that. 4 minutes, I'd say. So that's probably why he blundered. But after bishop, I played bishop c2 instead. Question mark, missing a win. Now if bishop takes a5, I can take on b3 or a3. Now if bishop takes a3, then knight c4, check. Now the difference is his king can come to g4, or he can, in fact no, he can block with a piece, so bishop d2. And now if bishop takes b3, then bishop takes c1, bishop takes c4. Again, black's a pawn up, but the bishop's opposite colour is going to make this draw, I think, because the notoriously draw is because the bishops can't like meet each other, and also they can, like, say if a king's on a certain square, like there's a certain blockade, like white can set up a blockade on light squares, sorry, dark squares, and I can never punish it because I've got a light square bishop. So that's why it's probably going to be a draw despite the extra pawn. So to try and win, I have to play bishop takes d2, check, knight takes d2, and now the pawn's defending, so I'm not going to be a pawn up. King e6, knight c4, which allows bishop takes b3, but after knight a5, I'm dropping b7. And this is almost certainly going to be drawn. In fact, it's anyone's game, but it's going to be drawn. So taking away b pawn is actually a slightly better winning attempt. Now he plays bishop b4, forcing the bishops off and making the draw even more closer, because now my bishop pair is getting eliminated. I play bishop takes b4, a takes b4, and king e6, matching the king in. And now I'm threatening king d5. But this is a draw, this. But my opponent actually starts to feel that he should punish me for not taking a draw, and when we swapped the rooks off, I must have been thinking that. Because actually he decided to try and punish me now and win the game himself. Now as white, would you really be trying to win this game? Alright, you've got a strong knight outpost, but your pawn structure's worse. You've got split pawns on d4 and b4, which are both isolated. Black's pawns are both connected on h7, g6 and b7, c6, so black's got almost a perfect pawn structure. Your kings are about the same. Black's got a bishop with pawns on both sides of boards. This all counts to saying white should not be starting a pawn race. That should be the last thing on his mind. He should just be sitting tight and taking his half point, not trying to win. If he plays h4, that's going to be a draw. I'm going to practically accept a draw here. I don't know how many sides going to win this. Or knight g4, bishop d5, h4, draw. I've lost pawns because I've not played ambitiously enough and missed that win. I'll be pretty good at missing that win if this had happened. Instead, he starts a pawn race with king g4 triple question mark. Now, let's play on a few moves. Ain't quite as simple as you think. So I play king d5, ready to pick off the d4 and b4 pawns and also unstabilise his knight, which has been a thorn on my side all game. And now I didn't really calculate it properly, but I realised that he could have played knight d7. The point being is that he can go knight f8, knight takes h7, knight back to f8, and knight takes g6, and win with his g pawns like part of a pawn race. Now I go king c4 is the best, actually given his best. And now he has two moves. One is knight c5, going after b7. I play king takes b4, knight takes b7, king c3, knight d6, king takes d4. The knight's been cut off f7 and the c-pawn's going to run up the board, and this is a win for black. Because white will have to give the knight up, and then the bishop will just win will win the remaining two pawns in the game. Another alternative, instead of knight c5, is knight f8. Now h7 can't be defended, but I play king takes b4, knight takes h7, king c4, knight f8, and now bishop c2, defending the g6 point. And white just can't get his pawns going, because if h4 b5, then white can actually never play h5 because of bishop d1 check, picking up the pawn. And if white tries to play knight takes g6, well, we will see that shortly. So h4 was played. Now I just take on d4. It's also stopping knight f7 because the bishop's there now. And now he plays the move knight takes g6, that pawn I mentioned earlier. And after h takes g6, h5. Now I could have immediately ended all this nonsense to force resignation with the simple bishop d1 check. Do not ask me how I missed that. Instead I just play g takes h5, king takes h5, because I just envisaged the simple plan. Basically white's b pawn's going to fall, and all I need to do is keep my bishop on this diagonal, so where white queens I sacrifice my bishop for it and then push the b and c pawns up the board to victory. So I'm surprised he didn't resign now. King c4, g6, king takes, king h6, bishop there, blah blah, this is boring. And now he finally resigns. And that puts me on a 1 out of 1, so it's a perfect start. But I shouldn't have won this game, it should have been a draw, but I did miss a win earlier on. And now this is quite an instructive game. We see that the double edge move e4 question mark exclamation mark didn't quite work and threw away any advantage white had out of the opening. Led to black being better due to his static advantages, like trumping over dynamic ones. So and then I managed to exploit my advantage eventually with the help of a blunder. But this is it's quite a good game this for this level. I think both sides played above the grade. It's more like 147 v 161 to be honest. But I managed to grind it down in this long 49 move endgame. Well, not long, but long for my game standards. And the next rounds will coming shortly. And you see that's 2 endgames in a row, 1 and 3 wins in a row, and 2 wins with Dutch. So you gotta love the Dutch, haven't you? Anyway, for now, please subscribe to the channel and visit the cafe on Chess Cube, and please leave any comments and thoughts. Thanks very much.